Hello, my name is Christian, also known as AnimalBot99. Today we'll be taking a look into a more musical element of composing, and we'll start to put the pieces together for making your first composition. We'll begin with introducing the basic elements and building blocks to music, take a short intermission, and then hop back on to take a look at some examples of all the terms I make mention of. This will lead to my next event where I'll dive even deeper into composing your own music. As always, if you have any questions at all, do not be afraid to ask. I've built in plenty of time to be able to explain or go into greater detail of all the terms I'll be talking about, as well as include a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. I will send along the presentation slides to everyone once the event does end. This presentation will also be recorded and uploaded to my YouTube. Thank you for your attendance, and let's jump right in. On the next few slides will be an introduction to all the music terms we'll be using. After I introduce each term, I'll dig deeper into them one by one. If you have any questions, please ask along the way. Without further ado, let's jump right into the music. So there's various types of chords out there. There could be triads, which are made up of 3 notes, also known as the root third and fifth. With those 3 notes, you could get major, minor, augmented, or diminished chords. A 7th chord is used a lot in jazz. Dominant 7th chords also make for good use when modulating. A 7th chord is typically made up of 4 notes, although there are exceptions to this. So there's many elements to take into consideration when writing a tonal piece of music, but the 4 most important to make mention of right now would be harmony. The harmony is there to help support the melody. It'll help if most or all of the notes belong to the chord, as it'll be more powerful to the listener. Contour. This is mostly for the melody. If you're just starting out writing music, it'll be helpful if you keep the melody's movement very conjunct or stepwise. To add more flair to the melody, leave only one focal point. The focal point is the highest note in the melody. Leaps. Avoid augmented triads. The augmented triads will ruin the flow of the melody. Rarely does a melody jump a 7th or higher than an octave. Of course, it could be done, but personally speaking, I try to avoid leaps bigger than a 7th in the melody. Tendency tones. There are a lot of tendency tones, but the most common is the 7th scale degree wanting to resolve to 1. This would be B to C if you're in the key of C. And I'll show examples on this later on in 1 second. So do you all remember Roman numerals? Surprise, music uses lots of Roman numerals. But if you aren't good with them, don't worry, they only go up to 7. When I dig deeper into chord progressions later on, I'll be using Roman numerals, but I'll point out which ones are which. If you're not up to date with Roman numerals, I suggest you practice them now. Anyways, the basic introduction is basic ah, capital Roman numerals means that the chord is major, and lowercase Roman numerals means that the chord is minor. So if we take a major scale, for example, we could say 1 is major, 2 is minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 7 is minor, and 7 is diminished. That is what the little circle means. Now, if we take a minor scale, we have 1 is minor, 2 is diminished, 3 is major, 4 is minor, 5 is major, 6 is major, and 7 is major. So some frequently used chord progressions that I can make mention of right now would be 1, 4, 5, 1, which is probably one of the most common. Then other popularly used chord progression is 1, 5, 6, 4, 1. Sorry to dive in. Now I get to dive into each term. Get ready for all the fun of music theory. So every chord has a root third and fifth, but the intervals used to make that chord vary. For a major chord, it's both go to major third up and then minor third up. So for a C chord, we start on C and go up a major third to E. Then from E, we go minor third up to G. And this will give us the C major chord. Much like major chords, minor chords have the root third and fifth. The only difference is how the chord is built. So if we start on A, for example, if you go up a minor third to C and then a major third up to E, this will give us the A minor chord. Augmented chords have a very distinct sound to them, much like diminished chords. Augmented chords are not used as much as major or minor chords may be, but when used correctly, they can really push forward a piece of music. To build an augmented chord, you raise the fifth of a major chord. So starting on C, we go major third up to E, and then another major third up to G sharp. And this will give us the C augmented chord, which sounds like. Oops. Diminished chords are also not used as much, but when used correctly, they really have a great sound that catches the listener's attention. To build a diminished chord, you need to lower the fifth of a minor chord. So starting on A, you'll go minor third up to C, and then another minor third up to E flat. This will give us the A diminished chord. And this is built on all minor thirds going up. We also have sus, or suspense chords, that we can make use of. As suspense chords do not have a major or minor third up from the root, they give off a rather hazy sound. Is it major? Is it minor? I don't know. However, many composers like Bach would take advantage of suspense chords to prolong the final cadence of the piece. So to build a suspense 2 chord on C, you'll go major second up and then a perfect fourth up. To build a sus 4 chord, you'll go perfect fourth up and then a major second up. And then here you go. Here's the sus2, major second up, and then perfect fourth up. And then sus4, perfect fourth up, and then major second up. Ready for some audience participation? I'm sure you are. I have some I have a few chords on the next few slides and would love it if you guys would guess which chord quality you think it may be in chat. It'll be either major, minor, augmented, or diminished. I'll also even tell you the intervals used to build the chord. Just remember how each chord is made up. Major chords are built going a major third up from the root and then a minor third up. Minor chords are a minor third up from the root and then a major third up. Augmented chords are all major thirds going up, and the diminished chords are all minor thirds going up. So here's some chords. I'll help you guys out if you need it by telling you the intervals that make up each chord. All you need to do is tell me the quality: major, minor, augmented, or diminished. Anybody want to take a guess on the first one? I'll give you a hint. Out of major, minor, augmented, and diminished, it is not augmented or diminished. So it's either major or minor. I'll just go ahead. The first one is minor. It would be an E minor. Anybody want to take a guess for the second? All right, the second one's gonna be minor too. The third one is gonna be major. Fourth one is gonna be diminished. Anybody want to guess last? That's gonna be augmented. You could put the plus next to the chord, which will symbolize augmented. Then anybody want to guess the bonus one? All right, the last one's gonna be a bass sus too. As you could tell, there are quite a lot of triad chords. The most basic ones to know of would be major, minor, augmented, and diminished. It's also important to know the intervals used to make each chord. Major chords are built from a major third up from the root, and then a minor third from the third. Minor chords are built a minor third from the root, and then a major third from the third. Augmented chords are built on all major thirds going up, and then diminished chords are built on all minor thirds going up. If you have any questions at all, put them in the chat and I'll answer them. And if not, we could just keep going. All right, let's keep going. So now we get to dig into seventh chords. There's so many different seventh chords that I've personally not used them all. Although it's always good to know the various seventh chords, as it will definitely add more color to your compositions. So let's jump right in. So the major seventh is built off a major triad with a major seventh on top. So if we take an A chord, which would be A, C sharp, E, which is a major triad, then from E we go a major third up. That will give us a major seventh on top. So that would be a major triad with a major seventh on top. And that sounds like. Then next, yep. Then next we have the major minor seventh, more known as the dominant seventh, which is built off a major triad with a minor seventh on top. This is more known as dominant seventh. So there you go. This is the major triad, but we lowered the seventh a half step. So it's a third, fifth, and now it's a minor seventh on top. Next, we have a minor seventh, which is a minor triad with a minor seventh on top. So basically, we just lower the third of it, lower it by a half step. So now it's a minor triad with a minor seventh. Next, we have the half diminished seventh, which is probably one of the most striking. So that is built off a diminished triad with a minor seventh on top. So what we do is lower the fifth of the triad, which will give us a diminished triad. We still have the minor seventh on top. And next, we have the fully diminished seventh, which is a diminished triad with a diminished seventh on top. So what we do for that is we lower the seventh a half step. That will give us a fully diminished seventh chord. So ready for more audience participation? It'd be much like the triads quiz, where I'll tell you the triad and intervals that make it up. All you need to do is put in chat what seventh chord it is. Just remember what each seventh chord is and how it's made up. So a major seventh is built off a major triad with a major seventh on top. The major minor seventh, or dominant seventh, is built off a major triad with a minor seventh on top. The minor seventh is a minor triad with a minor seventh. The half diminished is a minor triad with a diminished seventh. And the fully diminished seventh is a diminished triad and diminished seventh. So here's some seventh chords. I'll help you guys out if you need it by telling you the triads and intervals that make up each chord. All you need to do is tell me the quality. Major seventh, dominant seventh, minor seventh, half diminished seventh, or fully diminished seventh. Anybody want to take a guess? Let's start with this one. So this one is a major triad with a major seventh on top. Or, sorry, minor seventh on top. Hey, want to take a guess on this? I don't know how long you've been here for. Yeah, I'll give you guys the first one. This one is an E7. So it's a E dominant seventh chord. Anybody want to guess the second one? This one is a major triad with a major seventh on top. All right, this one's gonna be a G major seventh. This one's gonna be a minor triad with a minor seventh on top, which is gonna be a minor seventh. And then we have a diminished triad with a diminished seventh, which is gonna be B diminished seventh. And then we have a major triad with a major seventh on top, which is gonna be C major seventh. Take a guess on this one. Memory serves me right. This is gonna be a minor triad with major on top. Yep, G flat minor seventh. But just like triads, there are many various seventh chords. The most used one is the dominant seventh. If you could only study and remember one seventh chord, let it be the dominant seventh. I'll not bore you guys and break down every single triad and interval that makes the seventh chords, as you will have this whole presentation at your disposal. But just remember, each seventh chord is built off either a major, minor, or diminished triad, followed by a major, minor, or diminished seventh. Any questions so far? So, as you may imagine, there's a lot to cover. All the chords I covered were only in root position. Of course, you could have chords in root third, root first, and second inversion, and sometimes third inversion if it's a seventh chord. I could probably spend this whole presentation on chords alone, but I don't want to do that. So I'll dig into inversions of triads and basics to composition 3. One could also make the argument that versions of chords fall under voice leading, but for today, we're only going to focus on the melody when it comes to voice leading. We will come back to chords and harmonic progressions, and as for everything else, we'll see it in Basics to Composition 3. So having good voice leading in your melody will help the flow and structure of your piece of music. I'll explain further those four terms I introduced at the start, as well as other factors to take into consideration when composing a melody. So, the harmony is what's happening behind the melody. It's there mostly to support it. As it's there to support the melody, it usually does not overshadow or become more present than the melody. A good harmony will also mostly have the same notes that belong to the chord that it's on. So here's the beginning excerpt of one of my own pieces. You can notice that the flute is playing a sort of sequence. A sequence is a repeated motive following the same pattern, such as how the flute keeps descending. I'll dig into sequences in the next presentation. So I also broke the harmony rule in the clarinet as it does overtake the melody a little bit, and most of the notes do not belong to the chord. I'd suggest that if you're first starting out, don't be afraid to bend the rules just a bit, but if nothing's sounding good, always go back to the rules and follow them. So as you listen, notice how every other instrument adds more texture to the oboe and gives it a completely different sound or feel than if it were solo. The way your melody looks definitely affects the sound of it. Some ways to make a solid melody would have it to be mostly stepwise. Stepwise melody is easier to grasp onto as is interesting but also clear and simple. You do not want to have too much going on with the melody, such as any unneeded movement. It also helps to have the melody follow a certain pattern. Also, remember, one focal point. So looking back to the same excerpt, did you notice that the oboe part repeats the same exact phrase twice? Even the first two bars are almost identical, the first two measures. The only difference is the intervals used. So what this did was create a very simple and clear melody line for the listener to follow as I repeated the same phrase and did not overload the listener by introducing new material. You can also notice that there was only one focal point. Throughout the whole B section, it does not reach that C sharp again. So it makes the C sharp stick out a little bit more. And then also notice the stepwise motion. Although it's very subtle at times, it no doubt pushes the music forward and keeps the listener on edge while waiting to hear what is yet to come. So let's listen to the excerpt one more time. See if you can notice anything different this time around. All right, now we got to talk about leaps. It's always good practice to avoid augmented intervals, seventh jumps, and jumps bigger than a perfect octave. When you do have a jump bigger than a perfect fourth, it's always good to have the following notes leave in the opposite direction, such as if you have a perfect fourth going up, the next note will go down. If you have consecutive small leaps in the same direction, possibly by thirds, it it's always good to have it outline a chord. This will help reinforce the key to the listener and give them some tonal center. So from the same exact excerpt, I can show all the rules of leaps being followed. Right in the first measure of the oboe, we could see the melody going up a perfect fourth, but then leaving it going in the opposite direction, which is down. It also repeats in the same measure as well. If we take a look at measure 7, we could see that the clarinet outlines an A7 chord, E, G, A, G. The only missing note is the C sharp, but you do not need the third in the seventh chord to still have it be a seventh chord. And I think we've listened to this excerpt enough. So, tendency tones. Tendency tones want to resolve. If they do not resolve, it'll leave the listener very anxious or unsettled. If you're going for a calming or upbeat piece, this will not be your goal. The easiest way to resolve a tendency tone is by half steps, as they'll most likely occur on the seventh scale degree or the leading tone. So a half step from the leading tone will bring you to the first scale degree or the tonic. For better or worse, we won't be looking at the same excerpt for this one. Although I could find subtle examples, the problem is that they were very subtle. So the easiest way to hear a tendency tone want to resolve is playing a scale, as it goes upwards and contains every scale degree, which gives the anticipation of returning to the tonic. So how does it sound if we do not go to the tonic, but rather stop on the leading tone? Okay, now how does it sound when we go from the leading tone and finally get back to the tonic? Which one sounded better to you? Did one have more of a clear direction or path to it? Tendency tones play a huge part in music. Always resolve them, or you'll leave your listener distraught. So, I was thinking of doing a quiz this time around, but there was so much I skipped over, and still I'm not sure how well you guys know intervals, which is important when analyzing voice leading. So I'll just be analyzing and quizzing myself with some examples from the music theory book I use. Truth be told, though, it isn't much of quizzing myself, as I had time to analyze everything beforehand. So let's go. So, first thing I want to do is see what key I'm in. And I see that I'm in the key of G. So I know that in the key of G, if we're on the one chord, we're going to have G, B, D. And it looks like the G belongs to the chord, so that's good. And then the 5 chord in G is going to be D, which is D, F sharp, A. There's F sharp that belongs to the chord, so that's good so far. Back to G, and then B is in the G chord, so that's good. And then the 4 chord in G is going to be C. A does not belong to the C chord, so already right there, there's a problem. Then the 5 chord, which is D, that is D, that belongs in the chord. 1 is G, that's G, good. C, E is in the C chord. D, F sharp is in the D chord. And then G, and G is in the G chord. So I can already see another problem. There is 2 focal points. Another nitpick is that the focal point comes at the end, but still, there's 2 focal points. There could only be 1 focal point. And I think everything else looks good. I don't think I'm missing anything for this. So next one, we have B flat. So kind of be the same exact thing. D is in the B flat chord. B flat is in B flat. The 5 chord in B flat is F, C is an F1. Right here, that leap is, I believe, a minor 7th. That is a lot bigger than a 4th, bigger than a 5th. So you would not want to do that. And then the 4 chord in B flat is E flat. That's good. F, good. B flat, good. F, and then C, good. Yep. So everything's else after that's good, except there is, again, 2 focal points, which is not good. And oh, I almost missed one. This is going up a 4th, and then it keeps going up and up. What you would want to do is go up a 4th, and then go the opposite direction, so down. So that is not followed there. And then last one, we have D minor. So D belongs in D minor. And then G minor, F is not in the G minor chord, so that's already off. And then D, or sorry, I'm thinking of G major. A. E is an A, so that is good. And then A is in D minor. And then right here, I think you'd want to go up because you're going down, and then you'd want to resolve going in the opposite direction, but it just keeps going down and down and down. The 4 chord, which was G, G is good. Then E, A, E is an A, D, D. Then the 4 chord again, which was G minor, B flat is good, C sharp is good, and then D is good. The only good thing about this is that it does have 1 focal point. So let's see how I did. Yep, I, th- I think I got everything correct. So, yeah, like previously mentioned, A is not in the C major chord. There's 2 focal points, which you do not want. Over here, you have 2 focal points. Minor 7th leap down. This is not in G minor. And then this is just keep going in the same direction down. So yeah. So as you could tell, there's a lot of factors to take into consideration when going for good voice leading. But the primary ones to remember are harmony. Always think of what more you could have other than your melody. Chords alone could be harmony, but I want you to think further outside of just chords and melody. What could be moving along with the melody to make it more present? Is there silence in the melody that the harmony could fill in? Contour. Always look at the shape of the melody. A good melody will have a good shape to it. It will not look randomly placed or have giant leaps all over the place. Remember to have only 1 focal point as well. It will really help make that high point sound more significant and noticeable. Leaps. Once again, always look at the melody's shapes. You do not want major leaps bigger than a 7th. When you have a leap bigger than a 4th, always have it leave in the opposite direction. You go up a 4th, you leave it going down. If you have consecutive smaller leaps, try to have them outline a chord. Tendency tones. There are still a lot more tendency tones I did not make mention of this time around, but always remember, the 7th scale degree resolves to 1. You do not want to leave the listener on a cliffhanger most times. There's places to create tension, but you do not want the tension to occur out of nowhere with no preparation. So, any questions with voice leading so far? So, as you guys are probably already getting used to the flow of this presentation, the slide was going up. I did leave out quite a bit this time around. I left out some errors in voice lighting that could occur with your bass movements with your melody. Some errors could be parallel fifths, parallel octaves, direct octaves, contrary octaves, unacceptable unequal fifths, and spacing error. I've also left out another sort of major topic, non-chord tones. Non-chord tones definitely would make for a whole presentation on its own. You guys let me know though. If you'd like a full presentation dedicated to just one topic, put it in the feedback form you'll get once the presentation concludes. However, like most of the topics I cannot cover, non-chord tones and bass movements will show up in Basics to Composition 3. Yay, we made it to our chord progressions. Chord progressions, or more technically known as harmonic progressions, is what gives music life, sound, and emotion. We will cover all the chords, refresh your Roman numeral reading, and listen to some chord progressions. So the tonic chord, which is 1, is surely the end goal of any tonal piece of music. So, whether it's major or minor, the piece wants to end back on 1. And we also have 5, which is the dominant chord. The most recognizable use of 5 in 1 is 5/7 resolving to 1. So recognizable that's the most commonly used progression, 1/5/1. So the 2 chord has a predominant function to it, usually in minor when in a major key. And the way that we get to the 2 chord, the way that I'll break this down really quickly. So for in the key of C, C is going to be your tonic. So the notes that make up C is C, E, G, which is your tonic, third, and fifth. So if you take the fifth, which is G, and then you make it your the chord off of that, you'll get the 5 chord, which is G, B, D. Now if you take the fifth of the G chord, which would be D, you'll get the D minor chord, which is 2. So it's just moving down. Next, we have the 6th chord. So how we find that is take the D minor chord, go to the 5th of it, which would be A, and then you build the chord off that, which is A minor. Then we have the 3 chord. So you take the E from the 5th of A, and then you would get an E minor chord. 7th diminished. So the 7th diminished chord has a dominant function, just like the 5 chord. The way why it's grouped with 5 is because you could substitute 5 for the 7 diminished chord, and you'll still have that same harmonic function to it. And the way that you get to that would be take the E minor chord, which the 5th of E minor would be B, and that would get us the diminished B diminished. Next is the 4 chord, which could be used as a predominant function, which is why it comes right before 5 and 7. So if you start on 4, you may either move to 5 or, yep, you can either move to 5 or 7 because of this. But it can also be used to prolong a predominant by moving to 2 or 2 in first inversion, which is what the 6 is. And the 4 chord is usually always major in a major key. Now, if we take the 7, the fifth of B, which is F, that would give us the F major chord, which is 4. So now we get to see the full harmonic progression together. Along with this, we can see two exceptions noted. We have the deceptive cadence, which is 5 to 6. And then we also have 3 to 4. It doesn't have a special name, but it definitely comes in handy. And then, much like major, we also have the minor one. We have the deceptive cadence as well, which is still 5 to 6. And along with that, we still have 3 to 4. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but there is two seventh chords. One is major and one is diminished. So the major seventh one is naturally occurring in the minor mode as is. The seventh diminished one, though, is one that you would create by lowering the third and fifth. So why does it work? Well, as mentioned before, the seventh diminished chord can be used as a dominant function, so it could replace 5. So it has the same function as 5, so that is why you could replace it and why it works. Anyone have any questions at this time of the harmonic progressions, whether it be major or minor? All right. So I was thinking of making a harmonic progression abridged, but I didn't know how else to sum it all up. The charts will all be made available to you all after this presentation, and I'll strongly recommend saving it somewhere. I personally always look at the charts just to help guide me whether I get lost or nothing's sounding good. Her favorite slide. So as you'd imagine, I did leave out quite a bit. A big one is using chords that aren't in root position. To be fair, you could get quite far without knowing the first and second inversion writing, but it does help. I also completely left out any mention of seventh chords. This time, I don't feel bad laying it out though. Not even my music theory book introduces this until later on. But don't worry, we'll get there. Slowly but surely. So you may be thinking, where's the examples of harmonic progressions? I didn't forget them. But until we get to that, we must take a short intermission. If you guys have any questions at all, just put them in chat and I'll be glad to answer them to the best of my ability. We'll take a break for like a minute, and then we'll hop right back in. All right. Well, we listened to and saw other examples with the chords and voice lighting, so naturally we needed to listen to the harmonic progressions. These are what makes music special and distinct. You could have the same rhythm, same pitches, same voice lighting, but if the chords are different, then it'll be a whole different piece. And you better bet I am going to show you this. But first, let's listen to some basic progressions. 1451 is the most basic progression type. It's also worth noting that usually when you have this, you would have the chords inverted, like in like first inversion or second inversion. But for our sake, everything's gonna be in root position. And then we also have the deceptive cadence, which is 5 to 6. As it's such a small fragment and taken out of context, it might not sound too deceptive, but in a larger piece, it definitely has a much stronger deceptive feel to it. So if we look at the minor mode now, we have the 1-4-5-1 progression, much like major. The only difference is everything is minor except for the 5. And we also have the deceptive cadence, which is 5-6. So maybe the best way to hear the harmonic function is within existing pieces of music. Here we have oh, Bach's Oz, Verzig, Tag, Knock, Ostern. I, I don't know if I said that right or not. The Roman numerals are labeled already. Notice how some are in first inversion. You may also notice that the first 5 chord is minor, and also that 5 goes to 6. Much like anything else, you can always bend the rules slightly to get that perfect sound you're going for. Now, the fun part. I took a melody line that remains the same in pitches, contour, and rhythm. The only thing I changed was the harmonic functions that appear. So let's take a lesson. Now, here is another one. It's the same exact rhythms, same exact notes. Everything's the same except for the chords. So let's listen to how this sounds. So, do they both sound different? Was one happier than the other? Did one have more direction to it? Chords play a huge part in music. So, I hope you guys are enjoying this composition series so far. I was thinking of recapping everything we talked about, but I am sending this presentation to everyone, so I didn't want to take up any unneeded time. Of course, if you have any questions right now, please put them in the chat. When this event does conclude, if you still have questions, feel free to send me a message on Twitter, Gilded, Roblox, or even Discord. I just want to share along one major topic that we will be digging into for Basics of Composition 3, which is a segue right off harmonic functions. So we're going to be taking a look at cadences for Basics of Composition 3. I'm just going to name off all of them right now. So there could be authentic cadence, perfect authentic cadence, imperfect authentic cadence, deceptive cadence, half cadence, Phrygian half cadence, and the plagal cadence. So once again, if you want me to dig deeper into any specific topic, be sure to put it in the feedback form. I'm trying my best to gather all music topics I think would benefit everyone, but I also want to try to make it more directed towards what you want to learn. So please be sure to fill out the feedback form with any specifics you'd like me to cover. And I'm not sure. Any final questions? Don't think that there's going to be any. Any questions so far with anything that I covered? Nothing? All right. Well, like always, thank you for all those who made it out to the event, and thank you to those watching the recording of this. I hope this presentation can come in handy, and hopefully you got some music knowledge out of it. Feel free to join my chapter to get notified of my future events. I do have another event coming up next week, which will be a workshop focused on mixing a voice audio take. It should be quite fun. So, once again, please fill out that feedback form. That'll mean a lot to me. And until then, have a good day, evening, night, and I hope to see you at my next event. Thank you.